Hi, my name's Katie. I'm a graduate assistant at the St. Louis Mercantile Library. If you haven't already, please make sure you've watched the introductory tour video and the video on how to use our digital library. Both can be found on the Education Series webpage in parts 1 and 2. In this video, you'll learn how to analyze primary sources to expand your understanding of topics in art history. We'll be doing this by looking at two types of historical sources, portraits and historical maps. You will learn how to read portraits to understand the world of the artist and the subject. Historical maps will be used to understand the geographical context of a portrait. After the video, you'll find a follow-up assignment that will guide you through analyzing portraits on your own. From the two videos you've already seen, you should have a pretty good understanding of what a research library is and the role it plays in collecting and preserving primary sources. You should also know how to use our digital library to access these sources. Now, let's take a look at how we can use these tools to better understand our past. The St. Louis Mercantile Library has many artworks that show people from different parts of the United States. Paintings, sculptures, drawings, and photographs that show a specific person are called portraits. Often a portrait can tell you a lot about the subject, or the person being shown in the artwork. Sometimes a portrait also tells you about the artist who made the artwork. Geographical context or location is also an important part of a portrait. Location can control who or what is shown in an artwork, and it also affects why and how that person is painted, drawn, or sculpted. For example, an artist might include objects or clothing that represent someone's geographical background in a portrait to show where they were born, where they traveled, or where they lived. Because location is important in understanding portraits, we'll be using historical maps from the Mercantile Library in our analysis. Let's learn more about maps before looking at portraits. A map can tell us different things. Some maps show us major transportation systems, like roads and railways. Some give information about climate in different regions, and some show us the layouts of cities and towns. Although there are many different kinds of maps, most maps, including historical maps, have the same tools. These tools are the map title or label. A title or label is a text that usually describes what the map is showing. The compass rose is a tool that tells us direction. It's a circle that's divided into equal parts, and the lines in the compass rose point north, south, east, and west. North usually points to the top of the page, but it's always labeled with an N or an arrow. Then we have the key or legend. A map key or legend is a table or section of the map that shows important symbols. When you see a symbol on the map that you don't know, you'll get the key to define it. Many times, the scale will be located in or near the key. Another tool that was just mentioned is the scale. A scale measures distance on a map. The scale will identify a ratio, such as 1 inch equals 10 miles. Let's use an example with this scale. If you measured a street and it was 2.5 inches long on the map, the real street would be 25 miles long. There are also the longitude and latitude markers on a map. Longitude lines run north and south on a map and identify locations east or west of the prime meridian. The prime meridian is the starting point for measuring distance east and west. Longitude is measured in degrees. Like with longitude, latitude identifies the location. Latitudinal lines run east to west, above and below the equator, but measure distance north and south. Latitude is also measured in degrees. Not all maps have these tools at the same time, but they can be used to help us read a map when they're present. Now that we know some basic parts of maps, let's play a game. Let's look at a historical map from the Mercantile Digital Library and see how many tools we can find. The map on the slide is from 1929. What tools do you see that can help us navigate and know more about this historical map? If you notice the map label, great. The label at the top right corner tells us that we're looking at a map of St. Louis, specifically the northern riverfront. The label and the text at the bottom of the map also tells us the map's purpose. It's a layout of building plans for the northern riverfront of St. Louis. So if we look closely at the map itself, we see that there are plans to build an airport, recreation center, forest, lagoon, beaches, and equestrian field. The label also tells us that the map is created by the City Plan Commission under Harlan Bartholomew, an engineer. So right away, we get a lot of information about the map. What other tools do you see? Under the map label, there's a scale showing that 1 inch equals 500 feet. The scale helps the viewer imagine the distance between each site on the map. For example, they can see how far the lagoon would be from the recreation center or airport. There's also a compass rose to give the viewer a sense of direction when looking at the riverfront. Now that we are a little more familiar with the different parts of historical maps, let's keep them in mind as we study portraits. The first portrait that we're going to look at is of Auguste Chouteau, who lived from 1749 until 1829. Like with historical maps, we're going to gather information about portraits to understand their history. Unlike historical maps, however, we don't always have tools like a label or key to help us read a portrait. But we can ask certain questions to help us better understand an image, such as, when was the portrait created? What is the medium? In art, the medium refers to what is used to create an image. So, for example, a portrait can be sculpted out of marble or it can be painted with watercolors. Other questions we can ask to learn more about a portrait are, who is the artist? And who's the subject of the portrait? Now let's go through each of these questions. The painting we're looking at was created sometime around 1810, and the medium is oil on canvas. The artist didn't sign the painting, but the style of the painting is the same as other portraits by an artist named José Francisco Xavier de Salazar y Mendoza. The subject of this portrait is Auguste Chouteau, who is known as the founder of St. Louis, Missouri. Let's look at some maps to get an idea of the locations of the artist and subject and where they might have crossed paths, or where they knew each other from. Salazar was a Spanish portrait painter who lived in Mérida in Yucatan, Mexico until 1783. On the map, you can see Mérida marked with a star. It's almost at the tip of the Mexican landmass. Later in 1783 or early in 1784, Salazar moved from Mérida to New Orleans, Louisiana, where he started to paint Louisiana's major civic, military, and religious leaders. The line on the map going north along the coast from Salazar's hometown represents his move to Louisiana, and the star marks the city of New Orleans. Chouteau, on the other hand, was born in 1749 in New Orleans, which had been under both French and Spanish rule. So New Orleans is the connection between the artist and the subject. Salazar lived in and painted prominent figures from that city, and Chouteau himself was born there. This slide shows a map that gives us a closer look at the United States. New Orleans is marked with a blue star to show where the artist and subject's backgrounds connected. Chouteau was raised by his mother, Marie-Therese Chouteau, and his stepfather, Pierre Leclede, who was a French fur trapper who moved to New Orleans at the age of 26. From New Orleans, Leclede went to construct a trading post near the confluence of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers and took his stepson with him. The area ended up being too marshy, so they built a town 18 miles downriver, which would later become known as St. Louis. St. Louis is shown with a yellow star. Chouteau is known for leading workers in the building of the town and prospering as the area grew into a commercial hub. He was able to adapt to French, Spanish, and U.S. control. He became one of the town's business and social leaders. Now that we know a little more about the history and locations of the artist and subject, let's observe what's in the portrait. How is the subject dressed? He wears a red coat with gold trim, and underneath the coat is a white shirt with ruffles at the collar and gold buttons and lining down the middle. The design of the coat and shirt is typical of French menswear during the 18th century. This style of fashion became popular throughout Europe in the latter part of the 1700s, with the gold details on the coat varying from country to country. What, besides the subject, is displayed in the painting? It's a little hard to see, but Chouteau holds a tri-corner hat underneath his left arm, a hat which was worn by the French and also popular in the 18th century. So, now taking into mind Chouteau's geographical background, let's think about what the artist, Salazar, is portraying about the subject in this image. In this painting, the artist shows Chouteau's French heritage through his French-style clothing. Chouteau was a native of New Orleans, which was once a French colony. Plus, his family had a French background because his stepfather, Leclede, was originally from Paris before moving to Louisiana. It's also important to note that the emphasis on Chouteau's French background might also refer to the idea that Missouri was once under French control. So the artist draws attention to Chouteau's clothing to emphasize the sitter's heritage, and possibly his time in St. Louis. Now, let's look at a different type of portrait. This one is of James Pearson Beckworth, who lived from around 1800 until 1867. Let's break down information about this portrait, artist, and subject like we did with the previous example. This portrait's a bronze sculpture and was created in 2009. The artist is R.H. Dick, a St. Louis artist who creates paintings and sculpture about Missouri history and the American West. He was born in Kansas City and taught American history for many years before becoming a full-time artist. The subject of the portrait is James Pearson Beckworth. James Pearson Beckworth had a diverse background. His father came from Irish nobility and his mother was an enslaved person. They were living in Frederick County, Virginia, when Beckworth was born. This is the yellow star on the map. By 1810, Beckworth and his father moved from Virginia north to St. Louis, where he was freed and became a blacksmith. This is the blue star on the map. He went on to become known as an explorer and experienced fur trader. While trapping for fur in the territories of the Crow tribe, he was captured and later married into the tribe where he became a respected warrior. The green star is the Crow territory. The blue star on the map shows the geographical connection between the artist and the subject. St. Louis, Missouri, although at very different times. James Pearson Beckworth moved from Virginia to St. Louis when he was freed in 1810, and R.H. Dick lives in St. Louis today. The green star on the map is the location of the Crow tribe into which Beckworth married and became a warrior in modern-day Montana. Now, let's think about what's shown in the portrait. How is the subject dressed? He's dressed in fur trapper or frontiersman clothing. What, besides the subject, is shown in the sculpture? Beckworth is holding a rifle in a fringe case with markings of the Crow Nation. With the rifle, he also holds a Crow coup stick, or lance, which was a weapon used by Crow tribe members in a battle. And at his feet is a Crow warrior shield. After gathering information about the portrait, let's think about what the artist might want to show people about James Beckworth with his sculpture. In the case of this sculpture, we see another example of how location determines what is included in a portrait. As we saw on the map, James Beckworth had a diverse geographical background. He moved from Virginia to St. Louis, and then went on to travel a lot while fur trapping and exploring. While traveling, he interacted with many people, and even became a member of the Crow tribe. R.H. Dick shows Beckworth's geographical diversity in the sculpture. Beckworth's clothing not only symbolizes his life as an explorer of the American West, but also that of his career as a fur trader, which began in St. Louis, Missouri. Beckworth's life as a Crow tribesman and warrior is also emphasized through the objects included in the portrait, such as the Crow shield and coup stick. Let's look at one final portrait before we go over what we've learned in this lesson. Now, this one is different from the other examples because it's a self-portrait. It's one of 23 self-portraits in what is known as the Little Shield sketchbook. When we think of portraits, we often think of someone being painted by an artist. But this is a self-portrait, so we get to see how the artist wants to represent himself in a particular moment or moments. Think of what you might include in your own self-portrait as we examine this one. Let's gather some information about the portrait. The portrait's made out of paper and colored pencil, and it's part of a sketchbook that's one of the earliest Plains Indian examples of ledger art. It was completed in the 1860s, and this type of drawing is called ledger art because 19th century Native Americans used old ledger or account books for drawing. Before they had access to paper through their interactions with European settlers, Plains Indians commemorated or left a record of their life on their teepees and clothing. The subject and artist of the sketchbook is an Arapaho chieftain named Little Shield. Little Shield was a chieftain of the Arapaho tribe from 1865 until 1879. The Arapaho were a Native American tribe living in the eastern plains of Colorado and Wyoming. These areas are around the blue star on the map. Let's take a look at what's in the drawing, as we did with the other examples. It's important to note that, unlike the portraits of Chouteau or Beckworth, this is an action shot. The portrait shows Little Shield riding his horse into battle, and his arms are raised and he's holding a shield and a weapon. So there is motion implied in the portrait. How is the subject dressed? Little Shield's wearing yellow clothing with a red scarf or fabric trailing from his face. What besides the subject is displayed in the drawing? Little Shield carries a coup stick, or a lance, which is a weapon used in battle. In addition, he holds an Arapaho shield with black and white feathers in a red outline. The portrait also contains a drawing of his opponent, a Pawnee tribe member standing across from Little Shield and his horse. The Pawnee were located in Nebraska and Kansas. The rest of the sketchbook contains images similar to this, with drawings of opponents from other tribes, such as the Utes, which were located primarily in areas around Utah and Colorado. What might Little Shield want to show people through his self-portrait? Like in the other portraits, the location and life of the subject plays a major role in what is shown in the image. Little Shield shows his Arapaho culture through his self-portrait. He displays pride in his association with the Arapaho people by drawing himself holding a traditional tribe shield and coup stick. He also shows that he's willing to go into battle for his people by drawing himself fighting against a member of the Pawnee. The action shot also emphasizes what he wants to be remembered for, his warrior status within the tribe. Little Shield wants to be remembered as a fearless warrior who is ready to protect the Arapaho. Let's do a recap of what we learned from this lesson. First, we saw how historical maps can be used to learn about the geographical context of portraits. They can show us where the artist and subject cross paths and why certain people or objects are included in a portrait. We also learned how to start analyzing portraits. We can ask smaller questions about portraits to answer big concept questions. For example, we could ask, when was the portrait created? What is the medium? Who is the artist and subject? And what is shown in the painting? Does this location affect what's shown? Let's go over what we learned about each painting we analyzed. All the examples we looked at were created at different times and with different mediums. The Chouteau portrait was created on oil on canvas in 1810. The Beckworth portrait was a bronze sculpture made in 2009, and the Little Shield self-portrait was drawn on paper with pencil in the 1860s. We also saw how location affects what's shown in each portrait. In the first portrait, we saw that the artist Salazar and the subject Chouteau have connections in New Orleans. Salazar highlights Chouteau's French heritage in the portrait, his connection to French New Orleans, the connection to Euclide, his stepfather, and possibly his time in St. Louis under French control. Salazar does this by emphasizing his French-style clothing. In the Beckworth sculpture, the artist and subject had a link in St. Louis, although at different times. R.H. Stick highlights Beckworth's time in St. Louis in the West by portraying him in frontiersman or fur trapper clothing. He also represents his time as a Crow tribesman and warrior by adding objects associated with the Crow tribe in the portrait, such as the coup stick and Crow warrior shield. In the Little Shield portrait, location also plays an important role in what's shown in the drawing. Little Shield represents his culture in the drawing, and he shows his association with the Arapaho people by including a tribe shield typical of the Arapaho. He also shows the pride that he has for his tribe by drawing himself engaging in battle for them. In other words, Little Shield wanted to be remembered for his bravery fighting for his people. So now you've learned about the St. Louis Mercantile Library and what we do, the type of collections we house, and how to start reading portraits by looking at geographical context. Next, you'll open the follow-up assignment, which will guide you through analyzing different portraits in our collection. Make sure you open the assignment that goes with this presentation, the one on mapping portraits. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if it interests you, all of the images used in this presentation are of objects in this collection. You can also find links to additional resources and suggested readings in the Additional Resources tab on the Education Series webpage and under this video. If you have any questions, feel free to contact the Education Outreach team at mercantilelibrary@umsl.edu. Thanks for watching and happy researching!